that they would start off a sentence by saying, you would agree, you would admit to, you understand this to mean, kind of leading you along and setting you up. Lawyers are good at that. So as I do that, I'll just watch the nods, make sure we're all in agreement, and we can move forward. You would agree with me that God paid a high price for us, correct? Okay. And you would agree that because he paid that high price, and we've accepted that free gift of sacrifice, we have inside of us the Holy Spirit, correct? And you would agree with me that the fruit of the Holy Spirit, you identify a tree by its fruit, so the Holy Spirit looks like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You might not know all that right now, but you would agree, correct? Disagree. All right, so we're all on the same page. So what we have is we have a high price paid for us. We have the Holy Spirit inside of us. The Holy Spirit looks like the things we just talked about. And we would have to finally agree that when it comes to relationship with God and with each other, the Holy Spirit is better than the flesh, correct? So the best we have in us is the Holy Spirit. Okay, into the text now. Finally, you say. Reading from 6 and 7. I'll read from the NIV, but I might put in the King James word for now. While Jesus was in Bethany, in the home of a man known as Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he sat at the table. One more time. A woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which he poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. The first thing that I see, if we're going to be able to pour out our best, is that we have to be willing to break that which is holding our best back. We notice that the woman, who in the book of John is identified as Mary, that's the sister of Martha and Lazarus. Lazarus is the one that Jesus rose from the dead. Mary comes to Jesus with this alabaster jar, or a flask, which contained this very expensive and costly perfume. And that's important because we know that alabaster is a term used to describe a form of calcium that was found near the ancient town of Alabastra in Egypt. It's characterized by a creamy to snow white color that has a sort of a translucent characteristic to it. These colors are so magnificent and memorable with alabaster that authors and novelists have used it to describe other attractive things around the world. They often refer to women as having alabaster bosoms, so they're attractive and appealing to the flesh. Because of the translucent nature, some of these carvers would work this stone to bring out this glow, which would give it a presence. You can find alabaster in carvings and in museums in various cultures dating back thousands of centuries, indicating that there was a widespread popularity, that there was a worldly popularity of this alabaster. Because it was easy to carve and easy to polish, the Israelites would make these beautiful vases, these beautiful flasks that were just attractive to the flesh. They were nice to look at, and because they were polished, they were smooth and nice to touch and handle. And these ancient merchants would take these costly perfume and put it in these alabaster flasks, and they would seal it off such that the scent would gradually seep out of the porous shell of the alabaster, out of the porous stone of it, over a long period of time. So you can see these Israelites, they have these beautiful flasks. They're appealing to the senses. They're appealing to the flesh. They have this scent that comes out gradually. You can see them being sort of a decoration in the home. You can see them being a sort of a potpourri. You can see them being a centerpiece in the home. And here's the deal. Because they were used for that purpose of a gradual release of the scent, and they were sealed off, if you were ever going to get to the contents, you would have to break the flask. And the point is, each of us has alabaster flasks or jars in our life that are attractive to our flesh. We like to hold on to them. We like to go to them. And the problem is, when we're in a less than ideal situation, we tend to prop those things up. Some of the alabaster flasks in my life are pride, bitterness, anger, resentment. Yours might be a quick, sharp tongue. It might be impatience. It might be skepticism. It might be a lack of faith in troubled times. Whatever it might be, each of us has them in our lives, and they are attractive to our flesh. And you might say to yourself, that's not attractive. Those things are ugly. You're absolutely right. We gravitate towards those things. And so when I get sideways with my wife, which is a lot different than getting horizontal with her. When horizontal is a good thing, sideways is not a good thing. As we get sideways with each other, as I feel disrespected by her, I tend to prop up my alabaster jar of pride and unforgiveness. Instead of breaking those things and letting the Spirit flow, my flesh wants to hold on to these alabaster jars of unforgiveness and pride because it makes me feel good to make her feel the way I feel. It makes me feel good to strike back, to get the last word. So I hold on, and I'm telling you the truth. This is me, and I'm dealing with it, and God has taught me a lot through this. I hold on to this alabaster flask for days sometimes before I'm willing to actually break them. Let me give you an illustration that I think might help kind of bring this to a head. When I was playing football for the New York Giants, which I'm not ashamed to say anymore, it used to be embarrassing. I was playing football with the New York Giants. I was in my second year, and my knee began to hurt during preseason football to the point that I couldn't really describe the pain to the doctors. I had no idea what it was, never felt anything like it before. Went to the doctors and said, something's wrong with my knee. They looked at it, there's no swelling. They said there's nothing wrong with it. I said, au contraire, mon frère, there is something wrong with it. My knee hurts. So after 2 weeks of poking it with needles and shooting up the cortisone, still not being able to find what it was, the doctors began telling the coaches that they believed I was soft, that I was faking it, that I was hanging on for a free ride. So the coaches come around from the back end, they start putting pressure on me to get out there on the football field. But I said, hey, I'm not going to do it. The agents advised me not to do it until I get it looked at. So they scheduled a surgery for me. They get me in to the operating room, and because there was a lot at stake for me, my reputation, my playing career, I told the doctor I would like to stay awake and do like Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. Stay awake for the surgery. So they numbed me from my waist down. They get me ready to go. They put an IV in my arm so they can put me to sleep if it became too much for me. And I'm looking over at the monitor, and as they go in with the cameras, I can see it looks like a snowstorm on the monitor. I look at the doctor and I say, what is that? He said, that's the cartilage from your knee that's been broken up. So he vacuums it all out, and he finds this square inch of cartilage that broke off from the end of my femur. You have your femur, your shin, you have your kneecap, they work together. At the end of that was a square inch of cartilage that was broken off. So the first thing he did was he apologized to me for not believing me. And I wanted to hold up my alabaster jar of unforgiveness and a quick tongue and say to him, how did you become a doctor? Who gave you your certificate? Did you send in 2 proofs of purchase from the Frosted Flakes box? How did you become a doctor? But because I was paralyzed from the waist down and he had all these sharp objects, I thought that it wouldn't be very smart. So I put a small crack in my alabaster flask, and I said, don't worry about it, Doc. But that's not my point. My point is what he said to me next. He said, Adam, this is not the situation that you or I hoped for. This is not what we were hoping for when we came in and looked at your knee. But you do have 2 choices right now. We can grow some cartilage for you in the laboratory. We can bring that cartilage and put it into your knee, and you can try to run on that. Or we can break your bone and let the good stuff that you have inside of it be poured out and form the basis of your healing. I looked at the doctor and I said, Doc, shoot straight with me. What's my best option? He said, well, I got to be honest. Anytime you take something that's been formed outside of your body, that's out here in the world, and you bring it into your situation, you have a high risk of having complications. One more time. Anytime you bring in something that's been formed from the world, you bring it into your situation, you have a high risk of having complications. So the best thing for you to do is to break your bone and let the blood and the marrow come out of there and begin to form the basis of your healing. So I said, Doc, let's do it. Let's go ahead and break the bone. And what God is trying to say is, you have these alabaster flasks that have been formed from the minerals of the world, the perceptions of the world, this lust, this hate, this anger, this bitterness. It's been formed from that. When you bring that into your situation, you try to run on that, you have a high risk of having complications. The best thing for you to do is to break those things and let the good stuff the marrow of your spirit be poured out to form the basis of your healing. And here's the good news.